So good afternoon, everyone. And on behalf of the CIID staff, we're glad you have joined us today to hear those fresh perspectives on the child count submission from the group of states using Generate to prepare their EDFacts files. We're sharing those fresh perspectives because we're incorporating content today from states in multiple ways. We're excited to hear about a more in-depth story from one state presenter. What was it like to go through the past several weeks as an SEA submitting their child count in a modernized EDFacts? So we have 1 hour scheduled today, and we've reserved part of that time for you to participate, both provide content and ask questions. For now, I just wanted to mention that we are monitoring the chat. I'm going to ask Lindsay to kind of keep an eye on that because my sharing prevents that. So Lindsay, feel free to interrupt at the right time. We're also going to be using Jamboard, which we'll just practice using in just a moment because it's been a while. But SEAs have just experienced a change in process in EDFacts file submission after 20 years of doing same and similar things. We know that you've been supporting each other along the way, but we wanted to take this opportunity to bring people together just after the child count submission period to talk about the practices, to talk about the things that you've done to succeed, talk about the things that we can control to improve our work, and share stories across states. As I mentioned, please do post those questions. We will incorporate that content as we go. So to get started, I wanted to use Jamboard right away so that we're all over in that virtual space. Travis is going to help us out by putting a link in the chat. Thank you, Travis. And for an icebreaker today, let's test this out to be sure we all remember how to use Jamboard. It's September, so it's hard not to think about school. And for me personally, I feel like I'm restarting from square one. We just sent our kindergartner off on the bus yesterday for his first day, and it reminded me of all those September feelings that I had in elementary school. The excitement of starting a new school year, the return of those, familiar sounds and sights and smells, routines that we've left behind over the summer, a return of seeing our old friends that, in some cases added a whole foot in height over the summer. They look completely different. Or it's a very exciting time for kids to be back in school. And I'm sure that kids all over the country are feeling that, where we are a bit removed. I wanted to reflect a little bit in our Jamboard about what you love most about the first day of school. So we want to hear a little bit about your story. Sounds like we're having a little bit of trouble with the Jamboard, despite some testing that we did, which was successful.
Dan, is it made public? I know there's a setting in Jamboard that's like an extra public setting.
It ought to be. Let's see. Let me go to Jamboard. And I see Travis is here. And it says, I think it says anyone with a link can get access as an editor. How about we say that? I think that should do it.
Okay, Travis says he thinks fit. Let's try again.
It looks like people are joining.
There we go, I'm in.
Whoever posted new sneakers, right, you can't wear them before school starts because they won't stay clean. But then on the first day, you're inevitably coming home with sore feet or something like that, right? So thanks for sharing that. I'm going to go back to Jamboard to see some of your responses. New pencils, the process of sharpening all your new pencils, seeing old friends, school lunch, that cafeteria smell that you're looking forward to after a long morning of learning and excitement, probably ready to go home after all the excitement. I'm really glad to see some of these responses. Possibility, hopes for a new year. I love it. Seeing old friends. Absolutely.
And if you have not used Jamboard before, you can, on the left-hand side on Dan's screen, you can see there's a little sort of post-it note with its corner bolded. That's how you add. If you click on that, you can add a new one and you can change the color there.
Smiles and chatter. Yes. That first recess where you do get to spend times with the, the people who you have said goodbye to, when you have a little freedom to go out into, maybe it's late summer air, early fall air, and a new box of Crayolas. You can't beat it. So it seems we've found our way through Jamboard. Trevor Keepers, I'm not sure if they're still a thing, but yes, sticker those things up, right? I'm going to go back to the webinar and roll along and get into our agenda, because we are covering that new learning process. Here is what we've got planned for today: a welcome and introduction, a review of the changes brought about by modernization, SEA perspectives on child count and managing change, and a Utah deep dive on child count submission, and our always important evaluation, which is 3 minutes that we would really value of your time, so that we can get feedback and improve these experiences for you in the future. And by way of introduction, I am Dan Mello, CIID TA provider, and I'm joined today by Lindsay Wise and Colby Wilson, the EDFacts coordinator from Utah. And I wanted to do a special shout out to Audrey Rudick, who is CIID TA provider who helped us develop some of today's content. So thank you, Audrey. So getting into our content just a little deeper today, the reason why we've experienced change is because EDFacts, which had been the process for some 20 years, needed to be updated because of some security, some age issues, interoperability, and improvement of process for ED and for SEAs. These are the underlying reasons, but the ultimate goal would be to improve data quality at the time of submission. So prior to this modernization effort, those data, after they were submitted, were not usable until a lengthy data quality process had taken place. And that was a worthwhile process. And if we think about the experience that we've just gone through, we've taken the outcomes of that process and moved them up front to prior to the submission. So we are in a new modernized EDFacts where we're using EDPass, the new submission tool for EDFacts, to complete the data quality process prior to submission, in which states or SEAs are correcting data, metadata, and providing data notes as needed. The second goal, which we're not focusing on today, would be using CEDS to explain EDFacts data groups so states can gather and aggregate required data accurately. Aligning those file specifications and data groups to CEDS ensures that these data are comparable across SEAs, and much like those, the behind the scenes of Generate, we're looking at standardizing to a data model, and that creates that interoperability across different systems. That is the last slide. So we've modernized submitting files via EDPass by these new due dates, which we'll just highlight in a second, and with that new data quality process that I just provided a glimpse of. What have we learned? EDPass managers, who were sometimes called EDFacts coordinators, and one other designee in the state determined by the SEA, created user accounts this year for their stewards, their SEA staff who did need access. So this is a change that we saw for different users to have access permissions such as view, metadata review and upload, data quality, and submit. And these are all particular to the data area that you're working on. So this is a new process for SEAs to organize. And another new thing about this year is the multi-factor identification using login.gov to provide that extra layer of security for the system. So EDPass was enabled and child count files were due on a new due date, open for uploads in July with data submissions due by August 30th this year, this past August 30th, instead of April. Big change. This shift has seen some process changes between dates and also new data quality processes. And we wanted to start the discussion today by thinking about and enumerating things that we've learned. So one key learning that was experienced to varying degrees and handled, essentially in most cases, was that there were going to be growing pains associated with this new system. And as it was deployed and files were uploaded, errors began to appear. And there were some misfirings, which delayed other data quality work that you had planned. But of course, we're here to focus on what we can anticipate and improve, building our systems so that they can handle some of the new developing information that comes with a new system being deployed. So we had PSC holding regular office hours, and they reported that a theme was that many SEAs asked questions about data errors that appeared based on related files. And they might have appeared on the child count file based on other files like membership that were being corrected. So these files had business rules that were written with interdependencies, and learning to work through this new system meant learning to review and look at these errors in a new way. So just in our chat, in the webinar chat, and Lindsay, maybe you can help us out to just highlight some of the responses. Did you experience any error messages that were related to interdependencies? Were both of the files that were interdependent submitted through Generate? And how did you communicate with your EDPass user account staff on these issues? So I'm going to give just a quick pause time for us to just reflect on how you handled the experience. Yep.
Richard says it would be awesome if there was a column with the list of interdependent files in addition to the data groups. Is that a column, Richard, in EDPass or in the BRSI? I guess you're probably talking about EDPass. EDPass, okay.
So, Lindsay, could you restate that? Just
sure.
With that additional clarity.
I think what Richard's talking about is, I think if you look at this screenshot here, it would be really nice if there was a column listing those files in addition to, so it says data group 16, 39, and 74, if it also listed the file spec number. Is that correct, Richard? And that's something we can pass along. I don't think anyone from PSC is on here, but we can certainly pass that to our friends at PSC.
That's a great suggestion. Yeah, in addition to those data groups, to have those file specifications there. We're going to cover a little bit of content today that's going to enable SCAs to incorporate this interdependency into their data quality planning. And that, a report of those file specifications, I think would just reinforce some of the process that we're seeing states reflect upon for the next submission.
And Dan,
anything else in chat, Lindsay?
Nothing in chat, yes, but I want to add, and I'll talk about this a little later in some of we have some survey responses, but thinking about how to work through those for our Generate states that we're still working actively with, this is something that we'll continue to talk about for in future files. And so this is a conversation that we can have as TA providers. And there's also potentially working with partner support or other TA providers if you feel like you need a little outside help digging into this issue.
Thank you, Lindsay. And if there's nothing else in the chat.
Nope. We can move on.
Thanks. So depending on how you access and are involved in the process, we just wanted to highlight the BRSI, the Business Rules Single Inventory, as the best resource to understand how files and business rules affect one another. And what we're seeing states think about is using this tool as a part of their planning and organizing process to review and understand the business rules that can assist with planning and uploading and reviewing files that are interdependent. So if you know there are interdependencies, you can anticipate and incorporate reviews of the interdependent files so that your uploads, so that your access and your files are a little bit smoother. So what's next is we have an idea about what this process in EDPass has looked like for the previous submission. And we wanted to just look forward to the next submissions that do involve potentially submitting files that come from disparate systems that might not be fully integrated. And as we looked to January 2024, we see assessment files due, and February 2024, we see exiting discipline and personnel files due. So we're just previewing and thinking about your process for these assessment files, the interdependencies between academic achievement and participation, and between discipline files. For example, FS 005 and 007 have a relationship dictated by those business rules. So just kind of what might that look like is between 05 and 07, an example of an interdependency is that you can't have more children removed than removals. So in particular, provided by Audrey here, who's expert in this, the error identifies when the count of children unilaterally removed for drugs, weapons, or serious bodily injury reported in 005 for any disability category is greater than the number of removals for drugs plus the number of removals for weapons plus the number of removals for serious bodily injury as reported in 007. So it's not allowed because every child counted in 005 must have at least one removal counted in 007. Those are kind of the interdependencies that could fire and create errors that we would have seen post submission previously, and with our new data quality review ahead of time, we're seeing those earlier. And so we sort of speak to the audience here, who is primarily, I think, Generate users. Just acknowledging that the process and work that you put into preparing your state to use Generate to create these files really sets you up for success to sort of have a nice way of identifying and seeing these issues clearly using Generate. Let's see. So over the past couple of weeks, we've emailed out a survey to SEAs who used Generate to prepare and submit their files. And we wanted to know about their successes. We wanted to know about their challenges. We wanted to know about changes in their process and any data quality challenges that they were able to address. And we did hear back from a good chunk of them, and we'd love to share some of that learning that they provided. And foremostly, for having managed a successful change process, we want to celebrate. We wanted to provide you with a round of applause and pat you on the back because you put the data quality process first successfully, and you were able to meet the expectations of a changing system. We asked, and you said it was not super difficult, those who were able to submit successfully. So well done. And I think that whether you submitted or had any challenges or difficulties, we're all here to learn. And there are ways that we can all get better at this as we go and prepare for the next submission. One of the other questions that we put to you was what sort of data quality concerns came up for you. And SEAs reported that the process that they used to prepare files using Generate left little room for data quality concerns. A few states were able to identify some data quality concerns in the source data, but what was reported to us was that they were pretty limited and easy to address within the system. And I think we're going to Lindsay to hear about changes in process.
Is that me already? Okay. And
yes.
I want to, Dan, can you go back one slide though? Because
yes.
I want to make a little comment on the data quality issue. And I'm going to talk about this in my next slide about every state that we've worked with to Generate has come across data quality issues. It's something that we expect in the process. So the first time that you start to look at your source system data and put it into to your IDS and Generate and write your ETLs, I'm going to say 100% of states have discovered things that they want to adjust, business rules that they need to shift, or, decision points that had happened in the past that needed to be updated. So that is a key part of the success and the utility of Generate is being able to address those issues from the source. And once you get your data into Generate, then it is clean. So I just wanted to hit that point a little harder, Dan, because it's
Thanks, Lindsay.
Favorite. All right, let's go to my real slide. Okay, so we, in our survey that we sent to our states, or our child count submission states, we got some great notes about the way that they changed their process to meet the needs of modernization. Firstly, I'm going to start in the middle with faster file creation. So once you do have Generate up and running, I don't want to simplify it down to hitting a few buttons to create an EDFacts file, but it sort of does that because you've done all of your pre-work, your data's in the IDS, you migrate your data, and you come out with a file that should be pretty clean without any sort of, and the errors should have been taken care of on the way. So I love to hear about faster file creation. That leaves more time for some deeper data validation checks. And the two other things that we heard from states was that staff were empowered with the responsibility for IDEA files. And that means that there was enough discussion in a state and recognition that the right people need to be empowered with decision-making power and be able to communicate with their teams in a timely way. I think that probably, this is a different state, but it probably leads into improving the way that program leads can access information about uploads and errors. So when you give people access to the information, when you give them the empowerment to make decisions, it leads to better data quality, more efficient communication, and the ability to replicate things in the future, right? So that if you have a good routine going and you have open communication, things just look brighter year after year. So, and then my next slide is rising to the challenge. And we asked our states in the survey some of the greatest challenges that they faced. And these we've talked about already even in this session. And so these are common, I think, not only to Generate states, some of those dependencies among child count directory and membership. So not having anticipated some of the ways that membership and directory interact with child count is very common. And also making sure that you have directory and membership submitted beforehand. I think one state mentioned they didn't submit membership first. They realized they needed to. Here again, and this is sort of another story that I've seen as a years ago, member of PSC, which is communication, and all the way through my TA career is communication and prioritization among multiple departments to meet deadlines. So a lot of folks who work in special ed are very used to the way that OSEP used to more stringently enforce deadlines, and other program areas may not have been as pressured by those deadlines. And so getting everybody up to speed with the new EDPass deadlines might have been a challenge in some states. You don't have to call yourself out in the chat, but I would imagine this is a pretty universal issue. And then again, source data accuracy. As I said before, when you start to turn rocks over, you're going to find worms. It's just a matter of state data systems having been created by human beings over the years, and different decision points at different times. So making sure that the source data that you're working with aligns to the actual data rules in the file specs and what is programmed to generate. So we expect that every time we're starting generate, we expect to have to really look closely at source data accuracy and state business rules. So these are challenges, and we are working with our states to overcome them. So let's move on, Dan.
Thanks, Lindsay. I'm going to be thinking about your worm metaphor for the rest of the day, I think.
You're very welcome.
So, but yeah, and thanks for homing us in on source data accuracy and business rules. Those are critical to the generate process. We asked states to identify tools that they found helpful in preparation for and planning and organizing and implementing the process. And they reflected to us that the data submission organizer was helpful for managing the change in logistics, really, and the people and dates involved. The ETL checklist and the BRSI were the most helpful tools that they reported. Here's where we are asking for a little bit of your participation. We asked SEAs to consider how challenging it was to manage change with respect to organizing and planning, managing the process, managing stakeholders, and managing risk. We're going to head over to Jamboard and just reflect on some of the responses that we got, and there are some prompts for you as well. So I will close out my PowerPoint here, hopefully, and come back to. Is everyone over in Jamboard? Hope so. So by planning and organizing, we provided the guidance that we mean the creating and documenting of a comprehensive strategy. Let me sort of so I can see.
It's always good to see a child on a webinar, Dan.
Oh, you're looking at that screen still.
Yeah, we are.
Bring it back. Sorry.
Super cute.
All right, so I'll keep it over on the shared screen then. So we asked what were the primary challenges you faced in planning and organizing.
And make it a little bigger. I'm sorry.
I think I can. How about this?
Yeah, better.
That's better? Okay, thanks. So regarding planning and organizing, we mean the creating and documenting of a comprehensive strategy, key resources, dates, and staff, aligning to organizational goals, identifying pitfalls, and planning effective communications. So we asked states in our survey, what were the primary challenges you faced in planning and organizing this child count submission? And please do use your sticky notes to also respond to this question and provide detail that you think that states would find valuable. States reported that a new SIS and new collection programs caused a delay and a concern. It sounds like that's a comparison that they provided. And another challenge that was presented related to key personnel was that there were some new staff on board with a responsibility for preparing and submitting files. And many of those staff were unaware of the process.
And Dan, I put this in the chat, but can you put your mouse on, in case people aren't familiar, where to go to the next slide, that 2 of 6?
Yes, right up here, folks. If you're also at this URL. using this toggle here to the next frame will give you this question, and we're going to toggle to 3 more, so you'll be able to keep pace with us. Thank you, Lindsay. So use your sticky notes, folks. We're going to give you a free, some free space here where I'll stop talking for you to respond to these 2 questions, share your knowledge, share your challenges. I can't tell if people are writing because I'm not sure if the sticky note comes up unless it has something in it from someone, but
yeah, I think you have to hit enter.
Okay.
I'm wondering though, if people might have even had a challenge, there we go, planning and organizing at all, right? So that it's sometimes things are moving so fast, you're dealing with things day by day, but let's look at what people are saying here.
I can relate to that, Lindsay. Sometimes it was like, well, we were supposed to plan for this, or what exactly are you referring to here? Yeah, and as things are changing fast and information is coming at the moment, I think it is certainly a challenge to find the time to make sense, to plan and communicate. New staff, aligning different priorities across staff members, particularly with the new submission date season. Sounds like date is a theme here, especially for new staff who might not be able to prioritize their time, who might have, have overlapping and conflicting priorities as dates shift. That seems really reasonable and a challenge to overcome.
I'm going to make a shameless plug for the CIID tools. So whether or not you're working actively with CIID, I just put a link to the data submission organizer in the chat. And as we look next year, so the due dates for the following year have been posted, but it might be a really good idea to have a look at the data submission organizer, which is just really a place where you can list out the tasks and the month or the day that it needs to happen and whose responsibility it is to work with that. If you can get everybody to the table, so you can either do this in conjunction with the TA provider or independently in your state to work on aligning those different priorities across your staff members. So that you can look at the dates and say, this is what's happening. When do we need to communicate with districts? When do you need to have the time to do this work? Basically addressing these planning and organizing issues.
Yeah, I'm so glad you shared that, Lindsay. Thank you. I think that when our survey data revealed that tool was interesting, this is, I think, is primarily, number one. You can see what happens when you change the date, what happens to those steps in the process. Mm-hmm. I'm going to bump over to the next question, as I am a little bit short on time. I want to leave plenty of room for discussion. What were the primary challenges you faced managing the process of child count submission? And when we talk about managing the process, it's that which we planned. It's adapting those strategies and resources. It's maintaining opening communication, conflict resolution, empowering staff to make space in their calendar, and facilitating collaboration to ensure a successful submission. I'm going to leave this up for just a moment just to see if it inspires anyone to respond. This was, sorry, Lindsay, go ahead.
Oh, Deanna, I was going to say somebody added another one, which is very interesting to me. Thanks everybody for adding to these, but on the last slide, submission plans had to stay fluid due to summer annual leave. So that's another wrinkle that you may not have anticipated having previously submitted in April. But since it was in August, that's like a whole nother wrinkle that I had not seen, but that is a real challenge.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing that.
Thanks, Lindsay. I think so. Overall, I want to kind of save enough time for the conversation. So what I'll say is the planning and organizing received some more difficult ratings than managing. So In the managing, we really didn't see people reporting any challenges. I'd like to move actually even beyond stakeholders to managing risk in the process of child count submission. So if I just the same way that you reflected on Jamboard for the previous question, I'd love it if you provided feedback about how you thought about risk. Whether it's staff or system technical capacity can meet your timelines and key deliverables. One state reflected that everyone just put in an enormous amount of work, so everyone needs a raise to mitigate that risk. Thought that was really fun. But how did you think about ensuring that those staff are going to be available? With whom did you communicate? How were you able to communicate about what was required?
I don't know which state gave this conducting a thorough risk assessment and addressing competing. I would love to hear how that state did that risk assessment.
Single point of failure with the staff assigned to the process. Thank you.
And keep in mind that we can't tell who you are, just in case you're sharing things. We only know that that is some sort of animal, so you don't have to worry.
Unless you write your name, and we can follow up with you and learn from you. With all of these new user accounts accessing the system, one thing that I would be thinking about is how is that single point of failure managed? What do you communicate to these users about the process they should be doing within EDPass? And I feel like the risk of child count files is still yet to rise, especially if the non-IDF files are not produced with Generate. Thank you.
Dan, I want to talk about the risk of having a single point of failure, and that's a real issue, particularly in smaller states where there is not a ton of staff. And it is sometimes impossible to have a redundancy. So if somebody unexpectedly goes on leave or has vacation or gets pulled to another assignment, sometimes there just simply is not another person. And so having those conversations ahead of time about what the calendar is, what are the needs going to be, and thinking about how to mitigate that risk of just being a small department are really key. Making sure everybody understands what their role is going to be and when it's going to be.
It seems if you have not enough staff, or if you have plenty of staff, managing those staff through the process definitely puts up the risk flag for sure.
Yeah.
I'll just pause a second. I really want to turn it over to the conversation here. I'm going to check back on this later. So that is the end of this, and we're going to go to okay. So lessons learned that were reported to our survey were to conduct an after action review, make sure that the interdependent files are submitted in coordination. One state's hiring a new director of data governance. Excellent person to sort of quarterback that interdependency challenge, I think. And, as always, the source data quality checks that are just a part of this work. I'm going to turn it over to you, Lindsay and Colby, to talk about the Utah experience.
Great. This is so exciting. So thank you so much, Colby, for joining us. And So I'm just going to quickly go through this. We hope to share with you some about Utah context, Utah's approach and their investment in this work, their challenges and their successes. And so Colby is the EDFacts coordinator and CSPR coordinator in Utah. Colby, do you want to say hi and share a little bit about how long you've been at the state and what your experience has been so far, how this year went?
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for everybody for coming and watching this. I started, man, I'm almost 2 years in. So I've almost seen 2 full cycles, but for part of that time I didn't have authorization to submit. So I just rode co-pilot with someone who was doing it. When I started, we kind of had a sweet spot because my position, not only did we roll over my position, but we also changed departments. So when I started, I got a drive with a bunch of queries on it to the database that were labeled with the numbers of all the files. And that's how I started. It's just running these queries to see what things would happen, and learned the submission by drinking from a fire hose. It is great.
Thanks, Colby. I think that drinking from a fire hose will, actually, I know that there are people on this call who face that. I have spoken with them and worked with them through that. All right, so let's see. So Utah had a double challenge this year, using Generate for the first time and submitting to EDPass. Did you all do any advanced planning to take both of those changes into account?
Yes, so we've been working with Generate since I've started. So going on 2 years now, we've been working with Generate to try and submit files, and we're a little unique again because of the change in departments and the change in myself. My director just decided he does exactly what I need a boss to do: set clear goals. And the goal was make Generate do as much as possible, and then he removed barriers for us. And so we have weekly meetings, sometimes twice weekly meetings, so that we can organize and do the technical work. And then we do dual submission. So we use our legacy code and our Generate code at the same time, so that if Generate is not ready in time, we still have our legacy process to fall back on. And then we use both codes in comparison to make sure that we're getting the right data. We also had another challenge in that our servers are at their life, and so they're being rolled over, and we took that opportunity to change our architecture a little bit. We were in a stage to production type architecture, and now we redid it to do, we are now in a test dev, a prod environment, which was interesting because a lot of the queries we relied on used views that were redundant in the test dev and prod environment. So we basically rewrote the legacy code and Generate at the same time. So it was nice having that dual, because just in case something didn't work, we always had backup. So yeah.
So I didn't actually send you this question in advance,
Okay.
but can you talk a little bit about your advanced planning for that? So this due date had shifted, and then it shifted again, but how much work, and maybe you did this with your TA providers, like sort of looking ahead and planning out sort of like hard due dates, or thinking about how you were going to get this work done in time?
Yeah, and this is another interesting piece with Utah. We didn't actually have a system in place for data quality for the EDFacts files. When the data comes in from LEAs, we have lots of data quality systems in place to help LEAs get us the correct data and make sure that we're looking at what's really out there. We didn't, for this step of the EDFacts, we still don't have one in place. We're building the airplane while it's in the air. So in terms of planning, we kind of cast a wide net and see which one will be easiest to do, and then we tackle that. And so last year we actually managed to get some of the IDEA files submitted with Generate, and we're just going to expand that again this year. I'll be honest, the due dates, because they've been pushed back a little bit, they give us breathing room so that we can rewrite our legacy files and have Generate so that we have parallel development, and again we can check our data. So but again, I'm going to go back to my boss. He just keeps saying make everything work, and so whatever we feel like tackling, we do.
I love it. I love that. It sounds like you have been empowered to do the work that you need to do, and there's trust in that team, right? Yes.
Yeah, we have a great team. The Generate team is really good to work with. We have the right people in the right places. And again, we will be in meetings and we will hit we'll hit a barrier, and my boss, he has enough wherewithal to we actually call in IT to clear out some of those barriers while we're in the meeting, which is absolutely like that's done a lot to move us forward.
So on the spot working meetings, decision making, troubleshooting. Love it.
Yes.
And then actually what I'll suggest using the CIID toolkit, and I hammer this home, everybody, because my other hat that I wear at CIID is the product and tool manager. And so I've developed all of these tools and love them. So doing an after action review in conjunction with your TA providers, we have a tool for that in step 5 of the toolkit, as well as finding time to do the data submission organizer for child count, so that next year you know what the processes that you want to replicate are. You have a timeline written out, and you have the tasks that you need to happen. So that will be fun. We skipped the slide just in the interest of time that has the Utah Generate team. We can show that near the end, but we have both our CIID TA team listed and Colby's team listed, so we can hit that after. I think we've been talking a little bit about challenges, but are there any other further? Oh, just kidding. I was reading my question wrong. Did you run into any challenges with child count and the directory in that piece that so many states have run into?
Yeah, we did, but the issue wasn't with Generate. It was with our database. Somehow we managed to violate our own business rules. And so that throws a wrench in the system. And so what Generate pops out is accurate given the original data set. So when we got errors, we had to go back in and Scooby-Doo why, and sometimes, man, it took a hot minute to Scooby-Doo why things were showing up the way we were, because in Utah, we take snapshots of our data throughout the year. And so if data is incorrect in one snapshot and not in another, depending on which one we're querying, it gets super confusing and difficult to figure out what's going on. So I have to put on my best Nancy Drew hat and try and figure out what's going on. And then what's great about the team, Ruth Lett is the one who's doing all the ETL. She'll code it up, so we'll hard code it, put in notes so that if something wackadoo happens on another query or something Generate produces, we can go in and find it and fix the source data. I do want to add, in terms of staying organized with our goal of meeting certain files, we had Liz and Jennifer that kept us on track and relayed resources to me and to my team to keep us on track. So once we decide on a file to submit, those two are really good at providing resources and keeping us in line. So I don't have to keep track of that, because just doing EDFacts files itself is overwhelming, but having somebody help me stay organized is really a godsend.
I love it. We love all the folks on that TA team. Okay, and then do you have any lessons you want to share with what you learned from the submission?
And I don't.
That's a broad question.
Right, and we haven't had time to. We're so busy. that we have still not had time to debrief about what has happened. We were supposed to have a meeting yesterday and I missed it because I was in other meetings. So hopefully on Thursday I'll know more. Ask me again later. In terms of just overall though, in all seriousness, the process has been really great, and the focus that the team has to get stuff done is phenomenal. So in terms of just in general, right, clear goal, get things out of the way, and then everybody's just driving towards that. It has really been helpful. Yeah.
And I want to share something. So I met Colby this summer at the Stats DC conference, and Colby's boss, I cannot remember his name at this moment.
Aaron Brock.
Right, I met Aaron, and they came to Bill and I, and they were feeling nervous about this. They were like, "Have we done well enough?" Just like, this is so hard. And we were able to say, yeah, you're doing amazing. So Colby's sharing a lot of positivity, but at the same time, it wasn't like you guys were running around just like, yeah, we're killing it.
No, every submission, I'm terrified.
Challenge.
I'm absolutely terrified every submission. Right, because we run our legacy code, or we get the data, and then we do our internal checks, and that takes, because I'm new, that takes more time than it should probably take, because I don't know, like a new guy doesn't know where the Xerox machine is, right? I don't know where to make copies. In these tables, I don't know where certain ethnicity tables are, right? So I'm wandering around in the dark a lot. So every submission is a terrifying act, because you submit the file and then fingers crossed you jump into the error list, right? And you see 3,000 errors, and it's a little overwhelming, but it's like eating an elephant, right? One bite at a time.
That sounds as appetizing as finding worms under rocks. Dan, do we have time for audience questions?
Maybe one audience question if we have it.
And Robin says she feels you, or he perhaps.
I know. But at Stats DC, I wanted to have like a newbie get together, but the bar wasn't big enough.
It's been a lot of turnover. It's been a tough 3 years on state departments. Does anybody can they come off mute, or do we put them in the chat?
I think we should maybe get one in the chat. I don't see anyone typing yet. Why don't we get them? Yeah, we'll open up the chat for questions for Colby. Thank you. And as we go forward, we'll reflect on those questions that do come in. So I will share my screen once more.
So we can see the team. I want to make sure to give Colby's team their moment in the spotlight here.
Absolutely.
They really are awesome, and I just ride their coattails. I'll be honest with you. It is a solid team.
And it was Scooby-Doo, Nancy Drew,
yes.
and Wackadoo.
That's right.
Oh,
Sorry.
Here's the team, everybody. Go ahead and introduce your team if you don't mind.
Yeah, so Aaron is the director of data and statistics, which is the department I work in. Again, he's clear focus. We drive towards it, and he removes barrier. Malia knows more about our databases than I think anybody in the state. And so she has been key to making sure we know where stuff is and the business rules, and in checking our data. Ruth Lett is the one in charge of the ETL, and her skills are phenomenal. She's just really good at moving the ball forward. Liz connects us with all the resources we need, and it's just been great to work with. And Jennifer it has really helped in organizing us and keeping us moving forward. And again, with legacy, we're always sending files back and forth, and version control can be just a nightmare. And she really helps out with that. Like that is one thing I don't have to worry about. So it's super great team.
Thanks, Colby.
Thank you, Colby.
I'm going to turn it to our CIID director, for a quick message, I think. There we go.
All right. Well, thank you, Dan. Thank you, Lindsay, Colby, and everyone for putting this on. I just, a quick congratulations to everyone, all those that are on this webinar and those that weren't able to join us for the work on Generate, and particularly engaging with the new processes with EDFacts modernization. EDFacts modernization and it moving forward, and the department having confidence that states can go down this path is due in no small part to the work of you all on Generate, going back to the pilot work with our friends in Nevada on Generate many years ago now, and all the states that have since joined the work and are in a sustainable way using Generate. It's because of that hard work that that the modernization was able to happen, that Generate continues to move forward. More states like Utah are able to utilize it, and a number of issues and things have been worked out by the pilot states and the states that came along first. So it's been a big team effort, and just congratulations to everyone that's been involved and all the work. So thank you. Turn back to you, Dan.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah, it's great to be on the other side of the first submission of IDEA data. And thanks for that message, Bill. I wanted to let you know that we do have an evaluation, a 3-minute evaluation for this webinar session, and we do read all of the evaluation data and make changes to improve our service based on what you write. Please use the QR code or the link in the chat that Travis has provided. Thank you, Travis, to participate in this 3-minute survey. That's the end of our content today. Here's maybe I'll leave the QR code up there, but we are here for the next few minutes if you wanted to ask any questions. Lindsay, anything else I missed?
No, I want to reiterate how important it is for us to get evaluation data from you. It keeps us accountable to both you as our audience and to taxpayers. So
Thanks, Lindsay.
being a federally funded center, I think it's so important that we make good use of this work.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Also, special thanks to Colby. We had so much fun putting this together with him, and really appreciate his candidly sharing his experience. It's really a brave thing to do, Colby.
Thanks for having me. I also wanted to, I forgot 2 people I wanted to thank. I spend more time talking to Alex and Emily at PSC, their help desk folks. Like I spend more time talking to them than my wife on some weeks. So I wanted to shout out to them because they're not formally part of the team, but they're part of my team. So yeah.
I love it. I'll send an email to Jess Green right now.
Thanks.
And let her know.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for elevating them, Colby. And thank you, yes, for participating today. Thank you all for joining. This is the end of our time together schedule. Feel free to reach out or please do provide your information by evaluation, but reach out if you have any further questions. Thank you so much, folks. Take care.